Hello viewers, I'm Chris. In this video, I'm going to show you an easy way to learn DAX. Whether you're a beginner or an intermediate Power BI user, this video is for you. I started learning DAX in 2019 and I discovered that meaningful reporting cannot be done by just using drag and drop visuals. So that was what led me to learn DAX. So drag and drop visuals may look appealing at the start, but they wear down soon enough when you start modifying your work. Any meaningful reporting needs metrics and KPI to be calculated. So calculation in Power BI are done using DAX. So I had no other choice than to learn DAX. And DAX to me is not complicated as people do say. That's why it didn't take me time to understand the concept. And that concept is what I'm passing across to you today. So I assure you that by the end of this video, you will understand DAX better. So without further ado, let's get started. These are the areas to be covered. Introduction to DAX. What is DAX? Calculated columns, measures, aggregate functions, filter functions, evaluation context, variables, logical functions, relationship functions, date and time functions. So let's start with number one, introduction to DAX. Similar to how we write functions in Excel, DAX has a predefined functions and operators which are joined together or used individually to create a DAX formula. So few concepts that will make DAX learning a lot easier. Input and output parameters. So when writing a DAX formula, focus on what goes in and what goes out. That's the input and output. For example, this is a DAX formula. You have input equal to SUMX bracket table, comma, expression. If you are using this function form x, which of course you can use any other function as well, what's the first thing you need to input? The table. Then after that, you now put in the second part, which is the calculation. So that's the format for working with DAX. Most of the times the output might be a single value, which is scalar, or it might be a table output. Then another thing that will help you to learn DAX much easier is you need to understand the DAX functions. We have over 200 of them. Don't memorize them. Start with the key ones. Master their behaviors. For example, filter function will always return table as an output. Whenever you are working with DAX, think of table, how you can solve complex problem by formulating everything and put in a table. So that's the concepts that will help you to learn DAX easy. Now, before you start doing your calculations and so on and so forth, you need to set up your data model. That's the first thing, because everything is built around data model. In my previous video, I talked about data modeling in detail. So for better understanding on how data modeling works, please, I refer you to that video. What is this DAX? DAX is a collection of functions, operators, and constants that can be used in a formula or expression to calculate and return one or more values. So when you link all these functions together and operators and return one or more values, it can be a single value or a table value. Then that's what DAX function is all about. DAX can be used for calculated columns, measures, and calculated tables. If you are new to DAX, here are a few things you need to know. DAX is a formula, meaning all DAX formulas must start with an equal sign. Let's say, for example, here, your DAX formula must start with an equal sign. This is the equal sign. You can rename this to whatever you want to rename it, but it must start with an equal sign. Then you start writing your DAX functions. As I type sum, this is called IntelliSense. So once you type few words, it will bring out options in the IntelliSense for you to pick whatever you want to pick. So this is how to write DAX function. We will come over to this. Now DAX formula are case sensitive. DAX includes many of the same functions available in Excel. So if you are good in Excel, you come across so many functions that you have used in Excel. They are also there in DAX. Those familiar with Microsoft Excel will find learning DAX fairly easy. So Power BI has a built-in function library you can use to help write DAX formula. Let's move on. Number 3 in the topics to be covered is calculated functions. Calculated column is a column that you add to an existing table and then create a DAX formula that defines the column's values. Here is a simple summary of what calculated column is all about. It's a column that you add to an existing table. You use DAX to calculate the column's values. The calculation is done row by row, and this is what we call row context. As you can see from here, so it does the calculation row by row. Unlike the measures we are going to talk about, this with filter context is column based, while calculated column or row context is row based. Let me go to my Power BI. Here under report view, you can create a calculated column by just clicking on that table. Right click the table, you will see new column. You create your calculated column. You can also do that from table view. If I click table view, under here you will see new column. You can create your calculated column. You can also do that under model view. You will still see calculated column. So these are the ways you can create your calculated column. But what works for me best is creating it from the tables. Let me go to table view. Apart from here, I can also create the calculated column here. If I right click this now, I will see new column. I click on it. So this is the new column created. Now let me write DAX formula to create some values. This is the formula I'm going to use. Say C sales amount equal to sales order quantity multiplied by sales unit price. I click commit or enter, whichever one will get the job done. As you can see, the calculated column I created is filled up. I say sales table. Under sales table, this column, order quantity, multiplied by unit price. That's what you are saying there. Order quantity multiplied by unit price. And see what it did. It multiplied it row by row. So that's what calculated column is all about. As you can see, the outcome, the output. Now let me remove the decimal places. I click here. All right. What I did here can also be done using measures, which is our next topic. This one is registered right there on the table. By being part of the table now, it means that a certain space has been taken. So when you are doing calculated column, it goes on to occupy space in the data model. So, and it makes the reporting to be a bit slow. Unlike measures doesn't appear in the table. So when you do calculated column, what you are indirectly doing is you are adding up columns on the table. Let's go to the next topic. Measures. So when you want to do calculation on aggregated level and don't want to store the information on the table, use measures. It gives us aggregate values from multiple rows from the table. Measures don't create physical values, unlike the calculated column that we just created. As you can see, that one right there on the table. So for that reason, it doesn't increase the file size. Measures compute only at query time. When you want to create a DAX formula, then you can create a measure to use it there, just to compute only on query time. Measures are executed on the filter context. Measures return a single value as an output. As you can see from here, this one returned values based on row by row, but in measures will return values, a single scalar value. Now, what that means is that once that value is being returned, you can now filter the tables, add more fields to it. It will give you an insight of what those values represent, of what that single value represents. Measures, you use it in aggregate functions, filter functions, evaluation context, variables, logical functions, relationship functions, dates, and time functions. Let me go over to Power BI to do demonstration. Go to report view. Under cells, I right click, click new measure. The DAX formula tab has appeared. Now that I've created a measure, as you can see, the icon here is different from the calculated column. This is the calculated column. This is the measure. If measure is highlighted, you will see measure tools here. But if calculated column is highlighted, or you are working with calculated column, what you will see here is column tools. Let me go back and create a measure. So where do you use measure or calculated column depends on what you want. If you want a physical table for referencing, use calculated column. A physical table you can slice, use calculated column to get the output. But if you need an aggregated value, you can work with slice it, use some visuals on it. You go for measures. So it all depends on what you want. Let's create the same sales amount. I say, okay, SUMX, I pick SUMX, sales. Another thing you need to note here is that if I use the same formula I use in calculated column, it will not work in measures. Remember, I'm trying to get the same information. Sales order quantity multiplied by sales unit. I close the brackets. If you check the calculated column, the formula I use in calculated column, it's still the same format. This is my table name. This is the expression. From here is the expression. So I click commit. So measures is like a code used to put information together for reporting. Now I've created my measure, M sales amount. I created it on the sales table. So if I go to sales table, this is my sales table. If I go over here, I will not see it. The only thing I will see is the calculated column. The one I created, the sales amount I created in calculated column. But I will not see that of measure sales amount because it doesn't create physical presence. Measures don't add column to a table. I've created my measures. Let me put in metrics. Now this is my metrics. Drag these measures to 8. As you can see, it gave me a single scalar value. What it did is to calculate the aggregate values. Let me remove the decimal. You can see the sales amount using measures and the one we calculated using calculated column. They are the same. Now, as you can see, what we have here is the total sum of the cells. There's no filter applied to it. So we need to create a breakdown by adding some fields. So if I come over here, this is customer. Let me drag customer to the visual. As you can see, now we have added a customer name. So we have now applied a filter to this. Let me add products to it. As you can see, I've added products to it. So for every product, this is the sales amount. So this is exactly what you can use measures to do. Measures will help you to get a breakdown of information you want and create your report using that information. First of all, you put that information in a table, then you create a report using that information. Let's move over to the next topic, which is aggregate functions. When we combine or summarize the numerical data, it is called aggregation. Let's say, for example, if you have a table or a column in a table, you want to calculate the sum of all the values in that column. You use aggregate function to do that. It will sum up everything and give you the actual figure. Now, there are many aggregate functions, but there are three main categories of aggregate functions. Basic aggregation, which is the sum, count, average, count A. The difference between count A and count is that count A function counts the number of non-blank cells in a column. Those that are blank, it will skip those ones. Count will count everything, both non-blank values and blank values. Then we have expression aggregation. So we have sum S, count S. Any basic aggregation that has X attached to it as a suffix is expression aggregation. And this is basically for iteration, iterating column row by row. So that's what you use expression aggregation to do. Then we have distinct aggregation, where you want to get the distinct value without duplication. Then you use distinct aggregation. Now let's jump over to Power BI to do one or two demonstrations on aggregate functions. Now I'm in Power BI. I go to cells, right click it, click new measure. Here now I want to calculate the total cost of products. If I come over to table view now, let me click table view. This is the products, what it costs to get all these products. I'm using an aggregate function to do that. Calculations like this can be used using measures or calculated column. So I'm using measures, total cost of products. Sum, I click sum. Now the table, total cost of products, a total product cost. So this thing here, the information here on the column bar, a kind of help assistance that will help you to navigate or know the next thing to add to the query. This helps a lot. It's telling you to add the column name. The column name is total product cost. So I click total product cost, close it, click commit. So as you can see, it has added it here. Now let me add visuals. Let me add visuals to know the cost of each product or each product category. Let me drag this total cost of product to the visuals. Let me go to product. I want the product category, so I drag it to the visuals. Okay, from here now you can see I have this information. The aggregate function has helped me to get the breakdown of the products and their cost. That's what aggregate function can do with the use of DAX. Like I said earlier on, here I calculated the sum. You can find the count, the average, the count A, and so on and so forth. Now you can also use the aggregate function to calculate two functions, just like what we did here. This one is a function, this one is a function. Now let's create another measure. I want to find out the total profits made. I go over here, total profit. I will say sum, I drag it down. Which column name? I say sales. I use sales extended amount. That's the amount made from sales. What am I subtracting it from? I've used this operator sign subtraction. So I say sum of the cost of the products. So I click commit. This is the total profit made. So I added two functions, this and this, using operator subtraction. Let me put visuals to get the breakdown of the profit made by each product. I drag this, the total profit, to the visuals. Let me go to products category. From here, you can see the profit made from each product category. You can also add the period in which this is made. Let's say the month. You can also use quick measures to do this. Remember, we have been using new measures. Now, before I forget, you can add comment to your queries or your formula. So if I come over here, I click Shift Enter to add comment. I add 2 double slash. Then I can say total profit made from the sales. Here, anybody who goes through your formula will be able to know what this formula is all about by this comment you added. And this comment is not part of the formula. Once you add this double slash, it will treat it as a comment, not as a formula. So, like I said, we can also use quick measures to do this calculation we did using new measures. I click quick measure. Under calculation, I want to use mathematical operations. I click subtraction. Already I have my extended amount as the base value, just like what we have here. The total costs. This is the total costs of the products. I click add. It has added its extended amount minus total product cost using quick measures. This is it. The formula is the same with that of the new measure. If I come over to the total products, you can see the formula is the same with that of quick measure. The sum value is still the same. As you can see, the values are the same. So you can use new measure or quick measure to do the calculation. So that's it for aggregate function. Let's move over to the next topic, which is filter function. One of the most popular methods of data analysis is filtering the data. Data filtering removes the noise and exposes what is relevant. When data is filtered, it typically produces a subset of data that may be used to set up subsequent analysis. That filter function, which is a component of that function, is an iterator function that creates filtered table for your data models. As output, each row that matches your condition is returned. It's a simple command that starts with filter, then takes in 2 parameters. And the 2 parameters are the table and the condition. We also have multiple conditions, which takes filter, table, and condition 1 and condition 2. So we are going to look at all this. Let's go over to Power BI. In filter function, if the rows, let's say you are filtering days, you can say the due date that is less than 2018 should be returned. So it will look at the table row by row. Anyone that matches that condition will be returned. Anyone that didn't match the condition will be thrown out. That's what filter function does. So let's head over to report view. I click modeling, click new table. I want to create a new table to filter this information. I want to filter the unit price. Anyone that is less than 100 should be returned. I click new table of unit price less than 100. Okay, let me say unit price less than 100. You can come over here, click Control Shift, then backslash. You can now describe what the table is all about. I say filter. This is the filter slash sales, comma, sales again. I say unit price less than 100. I click commit. As you can see, this is the table. Let me go to table view. This is the table, unit price less than 100. So all the values and the columns that the unit price is less than 100 were returned. So that's what I'm having in this table I created. This is the unit price. As you can see, you will not see anything more than 100. So it has filtered all the columns. I can also filter a table based on multiple conditions. So let me do that demonstration now. Let me go to sales, right click it, new measure. Here, I want to find the total cost of product whose ship date, this is the ship date, is greater than 2018. And it must meet this second condition that the order quantity must be greater than 2. So these two conditions must be met. I say total cost of products ship date greater than 2018 and order quantity greater than 2. So I say calculate. Calculate function is a powerful function in DAX based on the fact that you use it to modify filter, you use it to add more filters. Sales amount, filter, sales, comma, and sales ship date is greater than 2018. Sales order quantity is greater than 2. I close the bracket with 3 brackets based on the number of functions I use. I click commit. If I come over to the data field, I will see what I created. It's highlighted already. So let me create visuals. Drag this measure I created to the visual. This is the total cost of products that met that condition. Let me remove this decimal. Now, what are those products? I'll drag product to it. These are the categories that met the requirement. Order quantity, let me drag it to it. Sales amount. As you can see, this is the total sales. Accessories, this is 1,278,746. But the one that met that condition under accessories is 524,819, less than half of the total sales. So you can add more fields here depending on what you want. That's it for filter function. Now the next topic is evaluation context.
And this topic will be continued in the next video, the part 2 of this DAX video series. If this video is useful to you, please don't forget to subscribe and click the notification button so that you'll be duly notified whenever I release more videos. Let's continue the illustration in the next video, the part 2. See you there.